Okay, so wrap up and vision for the future. And I can do the wrap up. You might recognize this print. This is a print that I know pretty well, thanks to some collaboration with Peter McGill back not too long ago. Wrote a little essay on this print. This print has made some headlines the past few years. It's kind of a recognized masterpiece by Man Ray, dating from 1924. The singular print, the singular masterpiece, I think we fixate on that quite a bit. But to me, that's not necessarily photography. Photography, it's about materials, sure. It's also about scale. And that's, these are some prints in the Pompidou collection. These are all Man Rays. The Pompidou itself has about 15,000 Man Rays. And a lot of them look like this. And to understand Le Voilon, I think you have to understand, or at least have to grapple with this idea of overproduction in photography. If we're talking about artistic process, the making of one print influences the next, influences the next. There are regressions and there are progressions. To understand that singular print, we have to understand, or at least attempt to understand, where that came from, the whole. There's a lot of reasons to do this. One of them is kind of we were just talking about kind of preservation reasons. This is not LML data. This is data from the Talbot Catalogue Raisonné, maintained at Oxford by the Bodleian, put together by Larry Schaff. That repository, online repository, contains almost 8,000 Talbot prints. And we scraped those prints from their website. We were really interested in the Pencil of Nature. There's a copy of the Pencil of Nature here at Yale. It's a partial copy. But if you don't know kind of what the Pencil of Nature is, it's Talbot's assertion that this is photography and this is what photography can do. And he put out a number of fascicles, and in those fascicles were I think 24 prints in total. So what we were thinking about was, is there something different about Pencil of Nature prints relative to everything else that Talbot was putting out, everything else Talbot was making? Notoriously, prints in the Pencil of Nature faded pretty badly and pretty rapidly. But salt prints by Talbot also fade, and some are almost nearly gone, as you all know. So we kind of did this. It's not quite a twin study, but we isolated from that group about 900 plates. And so those plates, they were made from the same negatives as appear in the Pencil of Nature, but some were bound in the Pencil of Nature and some were never bound in the Pencil of Nature. So we wanted to compare them to see if there was a difference. And we did this just in an automated way. And this is Damon's work, which is great. And so it's just, we're asking the computer, sort of, to find us the darkest spot on a print and find us the lightest spot on a print. And so you can see on the left, we're just taking the difference between the lightest and the darkest, and we get a degree of contrast, 64% contrast. Same negative as used on for both prints, and on the right we see an incredibly faded print, and we can calculate in an automated way that it's 7% contrast, and we can do that at scale over really thousands and thousands of prints in minutes. And so this is what you get when you do that with the Pencil of Nature. There are 24 prints in the pencil of nature, and we're organizing each print here. I know it's really small. Organizing each print by its condition. So the things in better condition will appear at the top. The things in weaker condition will appear at the bottom. And yeah, sure enough, something's going on with bound pencil of nature prints. We see a 28% contrast, very low sort of contrast in the pencil of nature relative to prints made from the same negatives that were never bound in the pencil of nature. So what I'm getting at here, I love this project. I think it's a great project, and there's a lot of smart kind of machine vision work going on here. But what I'm getting at, in terms of like vision for the future, thinking about scale and how do we grapple with scale, I think is really important. And it's important for a lot of different reasons. I'm going to talk about that. But one of the things it can do in terms of conservation science is it can really make our conservation science way more incisive. So here's another way of looking at that exact same data. And so we see pencil of nature in that kind of aqua color. We just established that it's in worse condition than sister prints that were never bound. Okay, we get that. But look at 9 and look at 20. It's almost identical. What's going on? And so that's something that we may miss in a sort of conventional conservation science mode of doing kind of deep dives. We could never get. Really? 5 minutes? Oh, I got to get going. Okay, here we go. So anyway, we're trying to. This is my symposium. No. Don't let me stand in the way of your of the reception. So I'm going to pick up the pace. So anyway, we can use scale to make conventional conservation science more directed, more incisive, and more intentional. But we've got to have a more maybe inclusive idea of what conservation science is. And that's something I think we can do as a community. I mean, we've seen what machine vision can do. We've seen what data science can do. And I think we have an opportunity in the field to be a lot more, I would say inclusive when we think about what science is in the conservation discipline. We have a lot of conservation scientists, not a lot, we could use a lot more. But thinking of collections maybe a little, instead of maybe the PCP, principal care, physician, if we had people kind of thinking almost in epidemiological way. We talked a little bit about the Man Ray app, and thanks Nora and thanks Katie for doing a tremendous job on this. And I think what comes out in a lot of the different presentations today is this is not about numbers. This is not about data for data's sake. This is about understanding the creative process, right? And I think that's really fundamental. All of what we're trying to understand, again, is where did Le Villandin come from? It was made. It was it was fabricated. What went into that, both from the manufacturing standpoint, but also from the standpoint of Man Ray and his process. And I think to do that, we need to think about how we configure our projects. And we have to be really inclusive there too. A lot of the time, it was very intentional to create the lab along the lines of, art historian, data science, art conservator. And we had the affordance of the time and the money to do that, and that's incredibly rare. And I think we have to, it would be to our mutual benefit to forge collaborations that cross disciplines. Also, I think, here's the Man Ray app again, and we've color-coded to the different collections that participated in this. And there are, let's see, whatever we got down there, 6, 7 different collections. Collaboration is actually hard. It's really hard. I think Katie and Nora talked about, there's just not a lot of time to do this work. And if you're in a position to think about what conservators are doing, I think conservators have a lot to offer when it comes to research like this. I don't want to be prescriptive. They don't have to do this thing. But, listen to your conservator, perhaps. And there's tremendous potential sources of new knowledge about photography collections coming out of the conservation discipline. Just time and resources. One of the other things that was touched on is in terms of the future, these apps, these ways of looking at collections, these are brand new. They are absolutely in their infancy. And to put up this data and expect, choirs of angels to start singing like, new insight, new knowledge, it's not gonna happen. Maybe someday, if we continue this investment. Things that I think we can do, so we need patience, and also, by the way, data is super messy. If you expect the data to reinforce your subjective understanding of something, well, no, it's pretty much gonna not do that. Almost all the time. And so you have to be nimble and acceptance, and believe me, it's counterproductive to question the data. The data is the data. It might be up here, right? Something else that we can do, I think, as a field, and we probably should take it really more seriously if we're going to talk about collections as data sets, we probably need to make an effort to get our house in order a little bit when it comes to how we describe photography in our catalogs. To describe something as a photograph, that's not going to cut it. That's not helpful. To describe it, we've got to think about when something was made. Not when the negative was made, when the print was made. And getting processes right is really important. And I think we need to invest in that as a community. Get our data house in order. Okay, I am truly almost finished here. This is a classic straw man argument, which is a logical fallacy. So but this is Bernard Berenson. He's sort of the quintessential, he's sort of an archetypical connoisseur, right? And he's doing connoisseur stuff right now. He's looking with his magnifying glass, and it's kind of a trope, and probably was a trope when this was made. But this is this is our notion of the connoisseur. He almost created this idea of what a connoisseur is. This human repository of all variants, and you can't question a connoisseur. The connoisseur knows, has special insight. No, we gotta get past that. I'm not trying to replace connoisseurship. I believe it exists, but I also believe that connoisseurship should be based on fact. It should be based on things that can be proven, and not just pure subjectivity. I'm gonna skip a bunch of stuff, and I'm just going to cut to the chase. I've given talks before where people have, kind of opposed these ideas just from the standpoint of that kind of connoisseurship argument that I was just making, which is like, well, you're taking the fun out of all of this. My interpretation is my interpretation. That's valid. And yeah, it is. Okay, it is. And however, I think if you wanted to ground it in fact, things become much richer and much more impactful. All right, so I'm showing you some dry data here. This is two clusters. You don't need Damon to tell you this is two clusters. This is two clusters. Well, this is Mapplethorpe in his final years. And 1986, he gets his AIDS diagnosis. He changes printers too. And so you can see for his platinum, these are just the platinum palladium prints. You can see that big cluster pre-1986 and that small cluster from 1986 until his death. And this is, Tess showed this. This is, for my money, one of the greatest self-portraits in history. And this comes from his second cluster, right? It doesn't matter what, okay. I told you, this is not about data. This is about embodied meanings. And these are techniques to bring out those embodied meanings, to build knowledge around those embodied meanings. Tess has the data, and she can show you this. But Mapplethorpe was, in these last years, just exploding what you could do. Sal Lopes was his printer. He's up in Jamaica Plain, Massachusetts. Talking to Sal, Robert he directed the use of this paper. Sal said, no, we can't do it. And it's like, Mapplethorpe was like, you have to do it. This paper is important to me for all kinds of reasons. And yeah, it's an unbelievable image, but it's made unbelievable because of how it's made and the meanings that are embedded in this object. And so these embodied meanings is really what this work is about, getting at them, allowing access to them. And I think, so that's from the materiality standpoint. And I think materiality at scale, I think what you start to see is you start to see photography. And that's it.